How to Speak the Secret Wealth Language, Shinn's Missing Chapter, Job 2228. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that supply is not something you chase, it is something you speak into being, and if you have ever felt like wealth speaks a language you were never taught, you are about to learn you have known it all along. Long before Florence ever wrote a word about affirmations, an old book had already named the whole secret. In the book of Job it is written, "Thou shalt also decree a thing, and it shall be established unto thee, and the light shall shine upon thy ways." That is Job, chapter 22, verse 28. And Florence Scovel Shinn would stop you right there and say, "Do you see it? The verse does not say wish a thing, or hope a thing, or work yourself to the bone for a thing. It says decree, which means speak it as already so. And here is where most people quietly fail without ever knowing why. They have been begging the universe in the language of lack, please, if only, someday, maybe, and calling that prayer, when the whole time the door was waiting for a different tongue entirely, the tongue of decree, the tongue of done. So before we go a single step further, let's put your mouth to work, right where you sit. Say it with me. I speak as one already supplied. I decree, and it is established. My word is my wand. Again, I speak as one already supplied. I decree, and it is established. My word is my wand. Now, wherever you are sitting right now, kitchen table, car in a parking lot, bed at the end of a long day, you carried something in here with you. Some worry about money that has been running quietly under everything else today. So before we go on, tell it to me plainly in the comments, in your own words. Just name the one thing, get it up out of the chest and onto the screen. Because a thing named in the open starts loosening its grip. And that loosening right there is where the first key begins. The first key is this. Your words are not commentary on your life. They are constructing it. Florence Scovel Shinn called the word your wand, and she meant it exactly as plainly as that sounds. When you say, "I can never get ahead," you have not described your situation. You have decreed your situation. You have swung the wand in the wrong direction entirely, and it obeys you either way, whether you meant it as a throwaway complaint or not. The wand does not check your intentions. It only takes the instruction and gets to work. Think of a woman standing in her kitchen holding a stack of bills, and she sighs and says out loud, "It never fails. Something always comes up right when I get ahead." She does not mean it as a decree. She means it as a tired observation. But Florence Scovel Shinn would gently stop her right there and say, "Do you hear what you just built? You took the wand in your hand, and you waved it directly at the very thing you did not want." And the strange mercy in this teaching is that the same wand that built the sentence can unbuild it in the very next breath. So this week, catch yourself once, just once, in the middle of an old sentence like that, and stop mid-word, and say instead, "Supply flows to me now." Notice how strange it feels the first time, almost like speaking a foreign language with an accent you have not earned yet. That is only the old self flinching. Keep speaking anyway, because that is not pretending. That is aiming the wand somewhere new on purpose. It is not that money is scarce. It is that your mouth has been decreeing scarcity and calling it honesty for years without ever once being asked to prove it. I aim my wand toward supply, not toward lack. The second key is this. Every state you dwell in becomes the address the universe delivers to. Florence taught that we are all living out of some state of consciousness, and supply, or the lack of it, is simply mail sent to whatever address we have been living at. Think of consciousness the way you think of a house. You cannot phone the bakery and ask them to deliver bread to a house you do not actually live in, no matter how sweetly you ask. And yet this is exactly what people do when they say, "I want abundance," while every thought and feeling underneath is still furnished with worry, still decorated with old bills taped to the wall of the mind, still living, quite literally, at the address called not enough, Consider a woman checking her bank balance every single morning, with her stomach already tightening before the numbers even load. She is not merely checking a balance, she is renewing the lease on a house called lack, day after day, signing the paperwork fresh each morning, without ever realizing her own hand held the pen. Now consider another woman, same balance, same numbers, who checks it and simply says, "This is temporary. Supply is already moving toward me." She has not lied to herself. She has simply changed her address, and the mail follows the address, not the wishing. So notice this week which house you have been living in most often. Is it the house called "not enough," or the house called "it is on its way"? And when you catch yourself standing in the wrong house, do not argue with it. Do not scold yourself for being there. Just move, quietly. The way you would walk from one room into a warmer one, say, "I dwell now in the consciousness of supply," and let that be your new address. It is not that the universe forgot you, it is that you gave it the wrong return address for years. I move my dwelling into supply, and I stay there. 2 keys in, and you already know something most people who love Florence never actually practice. Knowing a key is not living a key. She was plain about it. The word must be spoken, every day, out loud. That is why the Overflow Covenant exists. 21 mornings, 1 decree in your inbox each morning. You read it, you speak it. 2 minutes. $27, 30-day refund. First link under the video. Now, the third key. The third key is this. The old self who spoke lack has to be let go of before the new tongue can be spoken fluently. And here Florence's teaching brushes right up against something people misunderstand every single time they hear a word like that, near a lesson on wealth. So let's be clear together right now. No one is speaking of any ending of a person. We are speaking only of the false self dissolving, the old identity that called itself broke, or behind, or not the type who gets the big breaks. That self has to quietly fall away, so the true self, the one who was always wealthy in spirit, can finally be free to speak. And notice how patient this old self can be. It does not announce itself loudly. It simply borrows your voice at the exact moments you are least on guard. In the easy laugh at a family dinner, in the small joke you make to soften an awkward silence, in the shrug you give a friend who asks how things are going. Think of a woman named Ruth, who for 20 years introduced herself at every gathering with the same small joke. "Oh, I am hopeless with money, always have been." And everyone laughed, and she laughed too, and never once noticed that she was not describing herself. She was renewing a contract with an old identity every single time she said it. That sentence had become her coat, worn so long she forgot she had ever put it on, and forgot too that a coat can be taken off. One evening she caught herself reaching for the joke again and stopped mid-sentence, and in the silence that followed she felt almost naked, almost unsure of who was supposed to speak next, if not the old hopeless one. And that unsure moment, uncomfortable as it was the doorway. This is the part Florence Scovel Shinn wanted people to sit with longer than they usually do. That little flash of not knowing who you are, without the old line, is not a warning to turn back. It is only proof the mask has finally loosened. A mask never comes off smoothly. It catches on the way out. And that catching is simply the last grip of a self that was never really you to begin with. This week, when the old identity in you opens its mouth to say its usual line about money, let it go silent mid-sentence the way Ruth did. Do not finish its sentence for it. Finish it instead, as the true self would. Feel the strangeness of the new words in your own mouth, and let the strangeness pass. Notice too that the people around you may still expect the old joke, may even laugh before you say it, waiting for the version of you they have always known. Let them wait. The true self does not owe anyone the old coat back. It is not a death of you. It is the release of the mask you had mistaken for you. I release the false self so the true self can speak. The fourth key is this. The The secret wealth language is not something you speak once and forget. It is something you are speaking all day long, whether you notice it or not. So let's walk through an ordinary day together and see just how much of it your mouth has already decreed before lunch. 7 in the morning, you wake, and before your feet touch the floor, you think, I do not know how I am going to make this month work. That is a decree, spoken to an empty room, but heard by the only one who was ever listening, your own consciousness. 8:15. You are pouring coffee, and you say out loud to no one, this coffee is getting so expensive. Another decree, small, almost invisible, but decrees do not have to be dramatic to be received. They only have to be repeated. 9:40. At your desk, a coworker mentions a raise and you say, must be nice. Must be nice is a decree too. It is you signing yourself out of that very possibility and handing it to someone else instead. Noon. You skip lunch and think, I really cannot spend on that right now. One more small deposit into the account, called not enough. 3 o'clock. A bill notification, and the old familiar sigh. Here we go again. 4:30. Scrolling, watching someone else's life and thinking, some people just have it easy. 6 o'clock. Home, tired, and the day closes the way it opened, on a note of lack, spoken so many times before dinner that it never even registered as speech at all. It just felt like being realistic. Now, Florence Scovel Shinn would want you to notice something even more sobering than the words themselves. Notice how quiet they were. None of those 17 small decrees were shouted. None of them felt like declarations. They felt like weather, like something simply happening to you rather than something moving through you. And this is exactly how the secret wealth language gets spoken backward for years without anyone ever catching it, because a decree whispered under your breath while you butter toast still lands with the very same authority as one spoken deliberately from a stage. The universe does not grade on volume, it only receives the word and gets to work building around it. So the woman who mutters, here we go again, at every bill, is, without ever meaning to, laying a foundation just as surely as the one who declares her good on purpose. The only difference between them is which foundation gets laid. So this week, try the same day again, but armed, 7 in the morning, before your feet touch the floor. Say, today agrees with my supply. Coffee in hand. Say, I am cared for, in exactly this moment. At the desk, when someone else's good news arrives, say, if it is possible for them, it is possible for me. At lunch, say, my needs are already met. At the bill, say, I pay this and more, flows in behind it. In the evening, say, this day has been for my good. Do you feel the difference? One day speaks lack 17 small times without even trying. The other day speaks supply on purpose. And notice too that armed does not mean tense. It does not mean standing guard over every sentence with white knuckles. It simply means awake, the way you are awake to a step you know is there in the dark because you have walked that hallway 100 times before. After a few days of this, the catching itself gets easier. You begin to feel the old sentence rising in your chest half a beat before it reaches your mouth. And that half a beat is the whole of your power. That is the crack of light Florence Scovel Shinn called the opportunity to choose again. Right there, before the sentence finishes forming. And pause for a moment right now, and pick one real hour from your actual day today. Just one. And decide what you will decree the next time that hour comes around. Write it if you need to. Keep it small enough to remember without effort. It is not that your day was against you, it is that your day was simply repeating whatever you handed it first, hour by hour, without opinion, without judgment, only ever handing back exactly what it was given. I hand my day supply, and my day repeats it back to me. If this teaching is meeting you right where you are, subscribe now. The next key builds on this one, and I would love it to reach you. The 5th key is this. You do not need a long speech to change your life. You need one sentence spoken with conviction. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that a single decree, said with feeling, outweighs 1,000 words said without belief. And most people get this exactly backwards. They think the secret wealth language rewards the person with the longest prayer, the most elaborate paragraph, the most impressive vocabulary, when really, the whole language rewards weight, not length. Think of a woman kneeling by her bed at night, reciting a full page of hopeful words about her finances, tired, unsure, hoping the sheer volume of words will somehow tip the scales in her favor. And compare her to a man who simply says, under his breath, walking to his car in the morning, "Supply is mine now," and means it completely, believes it the way he believes his own name, that one small sentence outweighs her entire page, because hers was spoken in strain, and his was spoken in certainty. So today, do not reach for more words, reach for fewer, pick one sentence, just one. Something simple like, "Supply is mine now," or "I am provided for." And before you say it, pause. Feel for the weight underneath it. And only speak it once you feel that weight settle in like something already true. It is not that you need more words. It is that you need more belief, packed into the words you already have. One true sentence, spoken in faith. The sixth key is this. You will only ever speak as fluently as you believe yourself to be. Self-concept is the accent underneath every word you say about money. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that we must see ourselves already in possession before the words can carry any real authority. And here is the part most people skip right past. They think the decree itself is the whole of the work. So they memorize a lovely sentence and repeat it faithfully, and wonder why it lands so flat, when the truth is, the sentence was never the source of the power at all. The sentence is only a vessel, and it can only carry as much authority as the self who is speaking it happens to believe. Picture two women standing in the very same grocery store line, both quietly worried about the very same bill waiting at home. Both of them, on the way out to the parking lot, decide to try the very same decree, "I am provided for." The first one says it under her breath like a question she is almost embarrassed to be asking. Her eyes flick toward her cart, toward the register, toward the total, checking, hoping, half expecting to be corrected. The second woman says the very same four words the way she might mention what day of the week it is. Plainly, unbothered, already living inside the truth of it before any proof has arrived. Same sentence, same four words, same grocery store, entirely different language. Because underneath the first woman's words lives a self-concept still whispering not yet. And underneath the second woman's words lives a self-concept that has already signed the papers. So which one of those two women goes home more supplied? Not because the universe favors one of them, but because only one of them ever really spoke at all. The other one only moved her lips. And notice, this is not only true in the grocery store. It is true everywhere the self shows up wearing the old coat by habit. A man sits down to negotiate his salary, and before he opens his mouth, his shoulders have already answered for him. His voice comes out smaller than his worth. Not because the number is wrong, but because the self-concept walked into the room first and sat down in the smallest chair available. He could recite the finest decree ever written, and it would still come out sounding like an apology, because the self behind the words has not yet been told it is allowed to sit anywhere else. This is why Florence Scovel Shinn kept returning to the inner picture a person carries of who they are. She taught that we must catch ourselves seeing ourselves poor, or overlooked, or always the one who almost gets the good thing, and gently correct that inner picture the moment we notice it. The same way you would straighten a picture hanging crooked on the wall, not with panic, just with a quiet, steady hand. So this week, before you speak your decree, pause first and quietly upgrade the one doing the talking. Ask yourself plainly, is this the voice of someone still waiting for permission to be provided for? or the voice of someone who already knows the account is settled. And do not rush past that question. Sit with it for one honest breath, because the words that follow will only be as strong as the self you chose in that breath. And if the honest answer is that the smaller self showed up again today, do not be harsh with her. Simply introduce her, gently, to the one who already has. Let her borrow that posture for just this one sentence. It is not the sentence that carries the power. It is the self behind the sentence that the words borrow their power from. And once you see that, you can never again blame the words for falling flat. You can only ever go back and quietly change who is speaking them. I speak as the one who already has, not the one still hoping to get. The seventh key is this, and it is the deepest one. So let's take it in 3 pieces, slowly. First, consider the ground beneath the words. Second, consider the patience between the speaking and the seeing. And third, consider the fluency that finally asks for nothing at all. First, consider the ground beneath the words. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that the spoken word is a seed, and a seed planted in stony ground and a seed planted in rich soil are the exact same seed. The difference is entirely in what surrounds it. Picture 2 gardeners kneeling in 2 separate yards, each pressing the very same kind of seed into the earth with the very same careful hands. The first gardener presses it in and then spends every evening after digging a little at the soil just to check on it, worried it is not doing enough, worried she did something wrong, worried the neighbor's garden looks further along, and every time she digs, she disturbs the very roots trying to take hold. The second gardener presses the seed in and walks away, and simply trusts the ground to do what ground has always known how to do, and waters it on schedule, and otherwise leaves it alone. Same seed, same soil, same rainfall. One garden struggles and one garden thrives, and the difference was never the seed at all. It was the peace or the panic surrounding it. This is exactly what happens with a decree. You can speak, "I am supplied" 1,000 times, but if the ground underneath is doubt, if it is dug at nightly by worry, the seed sits there, unable to root. This is why some people say their decree faithfully for a week and see nothing and give up, calling the whole teaching false. A man named Daniel did exactly this. He decreed every morning, "The raise is already mine," and then not 5 minutes later, stuck in traffic, muttered under his breath, "Though knowing my luck it will fall through like everything else does," and never once noticed he had dug his own seed up before it even had a chance to root. So before you decree, take one full breath and quietly soften the ground first. Let go of the tight grip of needing proof today. Let go of watching for signs. Let go of checking. And just for that one breath, rest in the simple assumption that the ground underneath your own words is good. That is not naivety. That is cultivation. And cultivation is patient work, done in the dark, long before anything green ever breaks the surface. The second, consider the patience between the speaking and the seeing. This is the part almost no one tells you. And Florence Scovel Shinn was honest about it herself. The decree is instant, but the delivery is not always instant. There is a gap, and in that gap, most people panic and quietly take the word back. A woman waiting on a check in the mail decreed one morning, "It is already on its way to me," and then walked to the mailbox every single afternoon for 11 days straight. And on the 11th day, finding it empty again, she sighed and said, "Well, maybe not this time." And in that one side sentence, she reached back down into the soil and pulled the very seed out to inspect its roots, which is the one sure way any gardener knows to kill a seedling before it ever has the chance to stand on its own. Faith, real faith, is the willingness to leave the seed buried and undisturbed through the entire waiting, to keep speaking the decree not as a hopeful question tossed up into the air, but as a settled fact already written into the ledger, even on the days when the bank account has not yet caught up to the mouth, especially on those days, because those are exactly the days the ground is doing its quiet, unseen work, far below where your eyes can reach, and the check does eventually come. It almost always does, but only for the ones who never dug the seed back up to check on it. Third, consider the fluency that finally asks for nothing at all. Here is the strange and gentle turn at the very top of this teaching. In the beginning, you speak the secret wealth language on purpose, carefully sounding out each decree the way a student sounds out a brand new tongue, syllable by syllable, checking your own grammar as you go. But there comes a day, if you keep at it, when you are no longer performing fluency, you have simply become fluent. A business owner who once negotiated every invoice with a nervous little laugh, half apologizing for her own prices, one day found herself quoting the very same number to a client, plainly, warmly, without a single flinch in her voice. And she told me afterward, she did not even notice the shift happening. It had simply already happened. And a fluent speaker does not beg the language to work. A fluent speaker simply speaks, without strain, without checking the grammar, without waiting nervously to see if she was understood, and that is the sign the teaching has moved from the lips into the very consciousness itself. When you can say, I am supplied the same unremarkable way you say the sky is blue, plainly, without needing anyone's agreement, without even needing your own bank account's agreement, that is fluency. That is the tongue the book of Job was describing all along. Thou shalt also decree a thing, not thou shalt beg a thing, not thou shalt hope quietly for a thing. Decree, the language of the already established. It is not that the universe is slow to answer. It is that most people speak the decree once, and then spend the entire waiting season quietly unsaying it in 100 smaller ways. At the mailbox, in the traffic, at the register. And I feel it is exactly this daily unsaying that a steady morning practice like the Overflow Covenant was built to interrupt, one decree a day until the ground finally softens for good. I plant my word, and I leave the ground undisturbed until the harvest comes. The 8th key is this. And it finishes the verse we began with, the light shall shine upon thy ways, meaning once you decree rightly, guidance follows the decree the way morning follows the very first light, at the edge of the sky. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that after you have spoken your word, you must also watch for the way it opens, because supply rarely arrives exactly how you pictured it. It arrives through hunches, through people who casually mention exactly what you needed to hear, through doors that swing open a little easier than they should have, and if you are not watching, you can walk right past your own answered decree without ever recognizing it as one. Think of a man named Walter, out of work for months, decreeing every morning at his kitchen table, the right position is already mine, and meaning it as fully as he could manage. One afternoon, a neighbor he barely knew stopped him in the driveway just to mention, almost in passing, that her company was quietly looking for someone with his exact background. Walter nearly waved it off as small talk, nearly thanked her and walked on, because it did not look like an answer. It looked like weather, it looked like nothing. But that offhand sentence was the very light the verse had promised. Dressed so plainly he had almost missed it entirely. He followed it anyway. One small phone call, then another, and within 3 weeks he was sitting behind a new desk, and he told me afterward, the strangest part was realizing the guidance had never once announced itself loudly. It only ever whispered, in a driveway, on an ordinary Tuesday, wearing the voice of a neighbor rather than the voice of a miracle. This is exactly why Florence Scovel Shinn taught watching as its own discipline, separate from the decreeing itself, because the mouth can speak perfectly, and still the eyes can stay closed. So this week, after you speak your decree, add one more small habit. Ask quietly, what is the very next right step in front of me? And then take it, even if it looks small, even if it looks unrelated to money at all, even if it arrives wearing the plain clothes of a driveway conversation or a passing thought you almost dismiss. Because the light does not usually shine on the whole road at once. It shines only on the next few steps. And that is exactly enough. It is not that your decree failed to work. It is that the light was shining, and you were looking too far down the road to see it. And it is not that guidance speaks rarely. It is that guidance speaks constantly and quietly, and we have simply been trained to wait for something louder. I watch for the light on my very next step, and I take it. The ninth key is this, and it is the gentlest one of all. You were never meant to master this language overnight. You were only ever meant to keep speaking it. A little more today than yesterday, a little more tomorrow than today, until one quiet, unremarkable morning, you realize you have become fluent without ever announcing it to anyone. Think of a woman learning a new language for a trip she has been dreaming of for years. Every night after the dishes are done, she sits at the kitchen table for 5 plain minutes, stumbling over simple words, mispronouncing things a child could say easily. Some nights she compares herself to fluent speakers online and feels almost foolish enough to quit for good. Some nights she does skip it, closing the book early, telling herself she will catch up tomorrow. And tomorrow she opens it again anyway, not because she suddenly feels confident, but because she has decided the 5 minutes matter more than the mood she is in. Months later, she is standing in a foreign cafe, ordering coffee, without translating a single word in her head first. And she cannot even name the day fluency arrived, because it never arrived on a single day at all. It simply accumulated, unnoticed, in all those small, unremarkable nights she almost skipped. This is exactly how the tongue of decree grows in you. Not in one dramatic breakthrough, but in the plain minutes you almost skip and choose to keep anyway. Some days you will speak your decree in the morning and catch yourself complaining about the very same thing by noon. That is not failure. That is simply, here is the whole picture. Your words were never commentary, they were construction. So it is not that money is scarce. It is that the mouth was decreeing scarcity and calling it honesty. The address you dwell in decides what arrives. So it is not that the universe forgot you. It is that the return address was wrong. The old self had to quietly dissolve so the true self could speak fluently. So it is not a death of you. It is the release of the mask. Every hour of an ordinary day is already speaking. So it is not that your day was against you. It is that it simply echoed whatever you handed it first. One true sentence outweighs 1,000 hollow ones. So it is not more words you need. It is more belief inside the words you already have. Self-concept is the accent beneath every decree. So it is not the sentence that carries power. It is the self behind the sentence. The ground beneath the seed matters as much as the seed. The waiting is not punishment but cultivation. And fluency finally asks for nothing at all. Guidance follows every rightly spoken word, the way light follows morning. So it is not that the decree failed, it is that the light was shining on the very next step, and you were looking too far down the road. And fluency itself was never meant to arrive all at once. It was only ever meant to be practiced faithfully, one honest word at a time. And here is the one recognition underneath every single key we walked through today. They were never 9 separate keys at all. They were 9 turns of the very same key, the key that says your word, spoken in faith, as already established, is the whole of the secret wealth language. 6 keys. You are holding the whole map, and a map has never changed anyone. Walking it does, one morning at a time. Florence gave people a decree and told them to speak it until it was simply who they were. That is the overflow covenant. 21 mornings, 1 decree each morning in your inbox, drawn from the teachings you just heard. You wake, you read it, you speak it out loud. 2 minutes, and the day starts already in agreement with your supply. You could begin tomorrow morning. $27, and if nothing moves in you within 30 days, every dollar comes back, no questions. First link under this video. So let this be the last words you speak with me today. I speak as one already supplied. I decree and it is established. My word is my wand. And that, dear friend, is how you speak the secret wealth language fluently from this day on.